Welcome to the Strength and Courage podcast, a podcast focused on helping you lead with strength and courage in every situation you face. The Strength and Courage podcast is hosted by Ben Thomas and Hassan Kibirango. The Strength and Courage podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, B2THEWORLD. B2THEWORLD focuses on bringing fullness of life to the future of every child impacted by war. Stand with the millions of children in countries recovering from war so they can receive a transformative education. Start your journey as a B2THEWORLD ambassador by making a monthly donation at www.b2theworld.org/donate. And now to Ben and Hassan for today's episode.
Welcome, friends, to the Strength and Courage podcast. Today, for our final episode, for our final episode of season 2, episode 24, I am joined by my favorite person in the world, Susie Thomas. Susie, I'm so excited that you're here, and you know that I love you, and I'm so excited to spend these moments being able to share you with other people, for them to be able to hear some of your story and all the ways that you show strength and courage to me every day. So friends, you're in for a treat. Susie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, Suze, you've got a few different roles in your life. You want to just kind of, for those that don't know you, what are some of the different roles that you have in your life?
Yeah. Well, I have some roles that are kind of like official jobs, where if I don't do it, it's not going to get done by someone else. So I'm a mom to 4 kids. I'm a wife to one husband.
Yes.
I'm a teacher of 20 remarkable 5th grade students in Kigali, Rwanda. And also, I am a co-founder with you of B2THEWORLD.
Yeah, absolutely. And in all of that, all of that's undergirded by you're a Christ follower.
Yes, that's the role that is not maybe an official job, but is the role that determines all other jobs and roles that I take on.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, so love just for the audience to hear what strength and courage has looked like for you in some of those roles. So you're a 5th grade teacher. Let's start there, because that occupies a ton of your time and energy and thought. So, what does strength and courage look like for you as a teacher?
This is such an important thing because it makes me think back to when I was a 5th grade student, and which a lot of ways is when I learned how to be a teacher. When I was in 5th grade, I went to a small Christian school and had a really wonderful experience the whole time. But when I was in 5th grade, my teacher's name was Mrs. Wilkins. She was young and beautiful, which automatically just makes you like your teacher. Although looking back, I wonder how young she really was, or if she's just seemed young because we were so young and she was so pretty. But she had a big impact on me. And one of the ways I particularly remember that happening was in Bible class. Being in the kind of school I was in, we had Bible class every day, and we had a pretty narrow way of looking at the Bible because our school was part of a church, and so it had a specific theology that wasn't broadly open to lots of different ways of thinking. However, God made me with a mind that was always searching out different ways of thinking of things. And even in 5th grade, I remember sitting in Bible class. I think the lesson was probably on God as sovereign. And of course, I also knew as a child who grew up in the church and in faith that people were responsible for themselves, for their choices, and most importantly, for their choice to accept or reject Jesus' love. And so I asked my teacher in front of the whole class, in the middle class, how can God be sovereign if people have choices? And she, now that I'm older, I know that question doesn't have a super great answer that's easy to accept because both of those things are true, and it's not a balance between them. They're just both all the way true. But that's a hard thing for a 10-year-old, or any of us, to really wrap our minds around. And I don't know that we're expected to wrap our minds around it. I think it's one of the mysteries of God. So not really having a satisfactory answer, she kept trying. And I remember that. I don't remember what any of her answers were. What I remember is she didn't get mad at me when I kept asking, when I kept saying, no, but that doesn't make sense. What about this? And that doesn't make sense. She never got mad at me. She never lost her patience. And that was the first time I really understood in my heart that I can ask questions and God can handle it. God doesn't get mad at me and doesn't lose his patience with me when I have questions about him and about his word and about his will. He doesn't get mad at me when I have feelings about those things. And that was a really important lesson for me that I try to take with me into my classroom with my students. My students in our school, we are a Christian school, and we teach the Bible, and we teach from a faith perspective, but our students come from all kinds of backgrounds. Our Christian students come from many different types of churches, and I also have had students who are Hindu or Muslim or completely outside of the circle of Christianity and church. And being a room and a person and a space where kids can ask questions, and I can offer patience and acceptance. I can offer God's word, but I can offer honestly to them, not pat answers, because I don't think that helps kids. And I think it does take courage and strength to be okay to not have to win an argument and not be right and not prove yourself right.
Yeah, that's really great. Thanks, Sue. So as a teacher, you would say maybe for all the teachers listening, but also for all of us who teach in some way, whether it's to our kids or others, just creating a space for people to be able to ask questions and be able to be patient with others, even when a lot of those answers don't make sense.
Yeah, I think and also being patient with yourself, that you don't need to give them the answer.
Yeah.
Their questions are more important than my answers.
Right. Yeah, and it's really interesting what you said about it's not about being right. I was listening to Bob Goff's newest book, Undistracted, and in there he has a quote. I don't have the book in front of me, but I'll try to remember off the top of my head. He said, "I've had to learn that my job is not to be right, but to be like Jesus." And the more he's found that he's like Jesus, the less he gets concerned about being right. So, yeah, it's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about you are the co-founder of B2THEWORLD, and B2THEWORLD now is in our 5th year. And so talk about what does Strength and Courage look like for you as a co-founder? And I'm specifically thinking about, especially in those early stages of before we launched, what did Strength and Courage look like for you? And then even in these stages where the vision continues to get sharpened and opportunities continue to arise, what does that look like for you?
Thanks. Yeah, when we first started thinking about this specific idea, we were just coming off of a really dramatic season in our life. And through that season, we had been rooted in an organization where we'd been on staff for more than 15 years. And that group of people, that organization was my security blanket, was my family, were my friends. They took care of us in a lot of ways when we really needed it. And as we talked about B2THEWORLD and these ideas, I felt so passionately in agreement with all of these ideas, and I saw so clearly the way God had been writing this story over the past few years. But as it got to the point where it was clear we were going to have to make a choice between staying with our current organization or separating from them so that we could move forward with launching this as an actual organization and not just an idea or some good work, that filled me with a lot of fear. And I felt really unstable. I felt like our life was going to be very unstable. So that was a hard thing for me to let go of, to trust God for, that He was going to care for us in all the ways that His people in that organization had been caring for us for our whole life together, really. So that at that time, that was kind of where strength and courage felt the most crucial. It's been an interesting thing as we've watched B2THEWORLD grow, and especially in these past couple of years with COVID, it feels more and more like we've been watching it grow instead of that we've been growing it, because we haven't been able to travel or host as many people and be as active in the leadership of the organization in the ways that we've wanted to be. And so we really have just sort of been watching it and which has been a beautiful thing, because we've gotten to watch God grow it. We've gotten to watch God move it forward, open, close doors, and close a couple of open doors. And that's been, I think, a courageous thing. I've seen that courage in you, Ben, because you're a doer. I'm often content to watch, and you're not usually. And, to see you use your strength and courage to be a watcher in these couple of years, to watch God continue this movement and this organization and the growth of it and the bringing it into a more full reality has been really good. I think both of us have been in some important conversations about B2THEWORLD, where we hold tightly kind of our original dreams and hopes for it, and are trying to figure out when to loosen the fingers on those dreams, and what are the important things that we do have to hold most tightly to, because that's our job as co-founders, and it's not anybody else's job.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say to someone that maybe is sitting on an idea or watching their spouse wrestle through an idea? What would you say to them about what strength and courage could look like?
I mean, like with all things, I think in the kingdom of God, there's not a right answer. Sometimes strength and courage looks like letting go, walking away. Sometimes strength and courage looks like digging in deep, leaning in, pressing forward, no matter the cost. There's a foolishness to strength and courage. But strength and courage requires so much wisdom. And I don't know the right answer on how to determine which is which at all times, which I think is, what makes us rely on the Lord for so much, and what makes big decisions seem so confusing is because we know that if we're going to walk courageously on the path that He has for us, we are going to have to make some decisions that look pretty foolish, that take us outside of the wisdom, not just of the world, but the wisdom of the church, the wisdom of what we would call wise counsel. When we first moved to Rwanda, I had just been diagnosed with brain cancer and had gone through treatment for brain cancer. And this is, about a year and a half into our cancer journey. in which in which the doctors had told us probably was going to be about 3 to 5 years long before it was over, because I would be in heaven. That's not what the doctor said, but yeah, we had been told that I had about 2 to 5 years to live. And we decided, I wanted, and then we decided to move overseas. We came to Rwanda. It was a long story of getting there, but everybody recognized that as a supremely foolish decision. Oddly enough, except our doctors. Our doctors said it was fine. But friends, there's a big organization in the United States that trains cross-cultural workers. And we knew that was going to be an important step for us to take, to go there, to be trained before we took on such a big move and change for our family. So we were trying to figure out how to register for that program. And the president of that organization called us and said, "We will not accept you into our program because we do not think you should go." Mm-hmm. And that was shocking to me that he could say that to somebody whose life's work was to send people out to have an impact, to do something with their life and with the talents and the time God had given them, would say to us and to me that, "Except you guys, you shouldn't do that." Felt really shocking to me and a little bit, destabilizing kind of on my view of the world and the church. And but that was real, and that was, lots of people said that to us. If you do that, your cancer will come back. If you do that, you will die. And that was the wisdom, not of the world, but just wisdom coming from, I don't know. And we didn't take it lightly, but we didn't stick to that wisdom. We continued to seek the Lord. We knew ourselves well. And we came here. We came here to Rwanda, and it's been now 10 years since my cancer diagnosis, 8 years that we've lived here, where I've been healthy and whole and healed. And that's not the right decision for everybody in that circumstance. Mm-hmm. If we had a good friend who was 32 years old with 4 little kids and had just been told she had 3 years to live, and she said, "I think I want to go live in Africa," we might say, "Hey, that's not the best idea," because this wisdom for us and this strength and courage for us isn't necessarily the strength and courage that is applicable to everybody's exact situation. Mm-hmm. So that's what's so tricky about strength and courage, is it requires a certain kind of foolishness, and it also requires a profound amount of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, and so as we talk through that a little bit, how have you found that balance between discerning between what might look foolish and getting counsel and wisdom as you make decisions based on strength and courage?
Yeah. Well, I kind of hate the word balance. I don't think balance is the answer. I think that they're both important. And, we do need wise counsel. We need to discern the wisdom of God. And that is ever trickier and trickier in our world where so much is available to us of wisdom. We can access wise counsel from so many different ways right now as people living in 2022. And that's important. We need that. We had, for us, we had people we really trusted, which is mostly our parents. I think firstly our parents, who had walked us through that horrible situation and who knew us well, and who knew us well before cancer, and who were actually not the people who said you shouldn't do that. And so having some people where you implicitly trust their relationship with the Lord, their pursuit of God's will in their own lives, where you've seen them walk you through difficult things before, I think that's the place where I always want to start. The wise counsel from people who have proven their faith in the Lord over and over again, and who have proven their support of God's calling. So back to your original question about if you have sitting on a crazy idea or watching your spouse have a bananas idea, the pursuit of the Lord is the most important thing. Do you see that there? For me, it is and how it always has been. That's not true. It has not always been this way. We've been married 20 years. For the past 10 or 15 years, I have been deeply and profoundly aware of your walk with the Lord, Ben. And that has allowed me not to do whatever you say or to just swallow every crazy idea you ever have. But it has allowed me to see when God is leading you to things, and when he does, I certainly want to be there with you. Not as a follower, but with you. And so, yeah, but I have to see that. If I couldn't see that in your life, we both know I would not be the type of person that would just follow along. So yeah, you have to start with that. We have to start with listening to God and seeing that first.
Thanks, Susie. So I've heard you say a few things, but one, starting with, are you seeing a pursuit of the Lord in an idea? And then secondly, the wisdom and counsel of those that you trust as well. So, and friends that are listening, maybe, I'd love nothing more than as part of this podcast to be an encouragement to those that are wrestling through some ideas. And for me, one of the greatest senses of freedom that came was when someone told me, Ben, you don't have to have step 10 figured out before you can take step 1. It's okay to take step 1 and then figure out what step 2 is. And all of that couched in pursuing the Lord, wisdom of others. But for me, I couldn't move forward with B2THEWORLD until I knew that Susie was ready to come with me, and that we would do it together. So I would say for those that are sitting on an idea, wrestling with the idea, it is well worth your time and your effort to make sure that you and your spouse are on the same page as you're moving forward, versus trying to move forward and hoping that the spouse comes along. So, well, as we get ready to close, Susie, you've talked about your healing. You've talked about, your journey through brain cancer. Not in detail. There's other places where people can find that. But you are a person that was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor, and your prognosis was 2 to 3 years of life after that. And here we are 10 plus years later. And we certainly rejoice and are thankful for those that are going through it. And obviously we have several friends right now that are going through it. Another one this week that had a intense surgery. So, yeah, what would you say as a person that went through it, and now you're 10 years beyond that intensity of it, and we both remember just the intensity of each of those moments and days. So to families that are going through it, I know you would never want to prescribe anything, and that's been so beautiful about you. But yeah, what would you say to folks that are going through it Yeah.
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is there's no right way to have cancer. There's no right way to suffer. There's no right way. It's such a sacred, I think what I found so lovely and beautiful about being in those years, it felt so sacred, so special, like it was God and me and Ben, and there was nobody else who could be all the way in it with us except just the two of us and Ben and God. And, our families were as in it with us as they possibly could have been, which was amazing. But yeah, it's just such a sacred journey. I felt like, you've heard me say this before, Ben, but to me, that does not represent to me a time of strength and courage in my life.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember doing anything strong or courageous. I spent those people who were around me at the time know that I spent most of the time on my couch watching Downton Abbey, and because I didn't have the strength, the physical strength, to do the other things that I even used to enjoy doing. And I had someone else even who would watch my kids for me because I just couldn't engage my kids in the way that they needed and the way that I wanted to and wanted them to have. So that does not feel like a time where I was strong and courageous. However, I'm reminded Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 10, do not be grieved, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. That verse is a verse that God first spoke to my heart way before cancer, actually, in the first super difficult event in our life. And that was in 2007. In 2007, we were living in India, and we were pregnant with our second child. Simon was 2, almost 2. And about halfway through my pregnancy, the baby died. And it was extremely sad, extremely sad. It was the first thing, I think, first real difficult thing that you and I had to go through and grieve together. And that is when God first spoke that verse to my heart. The joy of the Lord is my strength. And I remember how that verse meant different things to me on different days. There were some days where I really was okay. I was happy. I was joyful. I was very aware of God's love for me and his blessings. I had Ben, I had Simon. We were in India. It was really an amazing time. And in those days, the joy of the Lord is my strength just felt like a gentle reminder, like, yeah, this joy that I have is a sign that I am strong. And or is a gift of strength to me. But on other days, the days where I was angry and sad and just so profoundly disappointed at the loss, where that verse was something different. It was a recognition of my complete lack of strength and that I had none, and that I had no joy on those days either. And it was only the Lord. The joy of the Lord was what I needed because I had no joy that day. I had no strength, no joy. But I could keep coming back to that and touching it and saying, but the joy of the Lord is my strength. It's okay that I don't have it today because God does. God has joy. God has strength. He's waiting to give it to me. He gives it to me. And I can recognize that I don't have it right now.
Yeah. Thanks, Susie. Well, it's been such a great joy to have you, Suze, on the podcast. I cannot imagine living with strength and courage without you by my side. And so, while I don't want to share all of that with everybody, I am glad that we get to share these few moments to hear from you about what strength and courage has looked like in your life. You're one of the strongest and most courageous people that I know. So as we conclude, is there anything else you'd want to say about strength and courage? And then if people wanted to follow you online, what's the best way for them to be able to do that?
I have no idea.
Instagram.
I am on Instagram as Susie B. Thomas.
And that's Susie with an S.
Yes, Susie, the correct way to spell Susie.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm on Twitter, but I don't know my Twitter handles, so
that's fine. Let's just stick with Instagram at Susie B. Thomas.
Yes, strength and courage. Yeah, I think that the most important thing I've learned over the years about it is it's not mine, it's God's. And that I can't mess it up. I can't mess it up with having a lack of either of those two things.
Yeah.
It remains available to me in all things. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Okay, great. Well, friends, thanks so much for joining us as we conclude Season 2, Episode 24 of the Strength and Courage Leadership Podcast. We're so thankful that you've been listening to us these last 2 seasons. We would love it for you to be able to share these episodes with your friends and like or tag us on our social media handles as well. I'm at Dr. Ben P. Thomas on Twitter and would love to have that. I'd love to see as you're listening in how we can be of an encouragement to you. My goal in life, or one of my goals, is just to be able to provide a shot of encouragement to people that are on this journey of strength and courage. So if I could be just a moment of encouragement to you, feel free to send me a DM on Twitter and tag me on Twitter, and would love to be able to be a part of that in your life as you're navigating this strength and courage journey as well. Thanks again for listening in, and we look forward to Season 3 getting launched in a little bit as well. And until then, continue to live with strength and courage, because we know that someone in this world needs you too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for joining us today on the Strength and Courage podcast. Please share this episode with your friends and tag us on social media. Ben and Hassan are active across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You could follow Ben on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Ben P. Thomas. You could follow Hassan on Twitter at Kibirango. Send us your questions via Twitter and we'll get back to you. Thanks to our sponsors at B2THEWORLD. Visit www.b2theworld.org/donate to become a B2THEWORLD ambassador today. Until next time, lead with strength and courage, because at least one person in this world needs you too.